We have Jon Blair, founder of Free to Grow CFO, coming to us right now. One hears, okay, there's a bit of lore that I would love to get from him. I have heard that he has got a Shark Tank status. Okay, I have heard that he has been involved in that whole shebang where Mark Cuban comes in, invests, they go from 0 to 8 figures in 4 years. And I mean, that is what I hear. That is what I hear. And everyone knows CFO, tough job. You got to be the bad guy.
Brutal job.
You got to be the bad guy. You got to be the bad guy that says no, especially to marketing. Always got to say no, which I hold no hard feelings, Jon, because you've never had to tell me no. But we need to bring him in here and get his perspective on growing DTC brands. Up and to the right, everybody, welcome Jon Blair. Get in here.
What is up? I'm in.
Ooh, crispy. Sounded crispy.
Crispy.
Ooh, do I need to turn back the mic?
No,
no.
Good, man.
Turn it up.
Good.
We need to hear.
Okay,
bam.
Yeah,
Guys,
we need you
I was
here, man.
busting up while you're introducing. Man, I was busting up while you're introducing me, man. CFO is always raining on everyone's parade, right?
Always has to. It's got to be the least popular person in the organization. Is that fair? I mean, I don't want to, it's not like I hold any personal grudges, Jon, maybe. But I mean, it's got to be everybody's least favorite because it's always, no, can't do that. You can't spin that. No, I mean, it is a necessary part of the job. Would you say?
You know what? It is. But, you know what, man? That's why Free to Grow CFO, the firm that I own, we really try to work with scaling brands. We're trying to be the yes men at the table.
There we go. We're
trying to be the yes. Now we'll probably get into more of this later. You say yes to the right things, right? But we're looking for reasons to say yes. You know why? You know what's a founder's? You know what word makes every CEO founder's blood boil? No, it can't. No. And what's the phrase they hate? It can't be done.
Oh,
of course it can be.
Ooh, I got PTSD right there. That hurt me. That hurt me right there.
It hurts to hear that. It does. I can't enumerate how many things I have proposed. Oh, look at this juicy. No, can't do that. Cannot be done. Doesn't work that way. All of the things. Jon, okay. Man, I want to get some of your background here because one does not get in your seat as an owner of such agency that offers such service to what I would say is, honestly, it's probably one of the most necessary services inside of our space, simply because, man, you're doing the things that honestly I would consider unsexy, but so necessary and absolutely helpful, and the basis for actually having a company that cash flows. Man, tell us how you got here.
Yeah, that's a great question. So look, I got into ecom, 2009. That's when I met Brian and Kyle from what is now Guardian Bikes. We all got our undergrad degree at a business school in Central California. And Brian started a company called Sure Stop Brakes. He patented a brake that prevents you from flipping over the handlebars. I started doing the books nights and weekends while I was touring in a thrash metal band. That's a whole nother story for a different episode.
Let's go.
After that stint, came back to work for Guardian Bikes, eventually full time. And Brian and Kyle, who were working for the company full time while I was moonlighting, I was moonlighting for probably 5-6 years. They joined full time. We scaled aggressively for the next several years. About 4 years ago, I started realizing, man, I really love that earlier stage of scaling. I was like, how can I do this again and again and again and again? Guardian, which is now a 9-figure brand with hundreds of employees and just crushing it. They were heading on to a different stage, building a factory, insourcing manufacturing and fulfillment. And I was like, I want to work in that early stage again. I want to do it over and over again. And I was like, let's get into consulting. Start a fractional CFO shop where we help 7, 8, and 9-figure D2C brands increase profit and cash flow as they scale. And fast forward to today, we got a team of 25 incredible e-com finance operators, and we work with about 50 brands, and it's tons of fun.
Incredible.
Jon, I'd love to get your take on this. Raba from Vermont and Trepoil, he's notorious for saying basically 20% of the marketing moonshots that you go for, the CFO or the head of finance should not understand at all. And they should have no understanding what you're doing. And it should be completely out of left field. And you can't even explain it to them. What would you say to somebody like that that's going to go into a D2C org that's like, hey, just to let you know, 20% of our ideas for marketing are going to be complete moonshots, and it's going to make zero sense to the CFO?
Yeah, look, I actually think that applies to every function in the business. That is actually why I view scaling a brand very similar to playing poker. And when I say that, I mean, it's a series of placing bets, right? And
Nice.
placing risk adjusted bets. And so the way that we think about it at Free to Grow CFO is we look at these streams of, bet and expected return, right? And if, let's say, 20% are moonshots that are either going to turn out to be nothing or they're going to crush it 10x, 20x, 100x, right? That means the other 80% need to be bets that have a more we have more confidence in what the return is. And so where a really good CFO can help is help you decide the segments of placing really bet sizing and assessing the risk of each bet. And so it comes not placing too big of a size of a bet in these moonshots and making sure you have enough certainty from the other 80%.
I agree with this so much.
John, I'd love to know from your perspective, like at what point of revenue does a brand need a D2C CFO? Like when is it crucial to have in place?
Absolutely. So if you're truly digitally native, started at ecom, Amazon, and or Shopify, it's usually at about 10 million in revenue that you need a strategic CFO. Now, if you're a more B2B heavy CPG brand, really smashing into like thousands of doors of physical retail, you might need one closer to like 5 million. There's a lot of complexity as you're expanding into retail, but on the ecom side, it's about 10 million in revenue.
So, John, I'm going to ask a very nerdy CFO question. What is the point of forecasting if forecasts are always wrong?
I love it, man. So I always say, what's rule number one of forecasting? It's going to be wrong. That's rule number one, right? If that's rule number one, then what's the point? Forecasting is more about an exercise in planning. And specifically, it's about assessing the cause and effect relationship of if we execute on these inputs, here's the expected outputs, right? And so it's less about prediction. In fact, it's very little about prediction. And it's much more about if we do A, B, and C, we expect, Y, W, Z to happen. And so really it's more a game of scenario planning because you go with plan A, expect an outcome. If that breaks down, you've already scenario planned plan B and you already know what you're going to do about it. And in ecom, what do we all know about ecom? Everything's freaking changing all the time.
All the
and
time.
Plan A always breaks. So forecasting
breaks.
is more about running scenarios than anything else.
John,
I love that.
I feel like on the forecasting side, of course, it's always moving target. But I feel like from the marketing piece, it almost feels like having that number to hit at the end of the month, end of the quarter, et cetera. It almost feels like it becomes an exercise of will. So it's like, hey, here's where we need to go. Okay, that means on my side, if we're not tracking there by day 4, we got to do some more campaigns. We've got to launch more ads. We've got to see what offer. Do you find this kind of attitude helpful, or do you see this with the kind of clients that you work with? Is there ever a side to that where it's like, now that we've got that target, now what do we do on our side to make sure that happens? Do you see this on your side with the clients you work with?
Absolutely, because if you have some outcome you're driving towards, right? That's like the end output in the sales forecast. You've got to have some sort of drivers, whether that's, new customer, whether that's new customers acquired or it's returning customer sales or it's looking at retention data. You've got to have activity metrics that are building up to that outcome that you're headed for. And so what it can help you do is spot if you're behind on activity, which is the leading indicators or the leading drivers of that forecast outcome that you're going after. So it is helpful to be thoughtful. Again, going back to me talking about like the cause and effect relationship, That's what
Yep.
matters, is that your model, in this case, a sales model, has the right drivers, that there's a cause and effect, that if we push this up, the output should go up, right? And so that really is the essence of what it's all about. And you can start bottoms up with the activity, or you can start top down with the outcome, back solving for what activity is required to get to where you want to be.
John, I mean, you've probably seen hundreds, maybe even thousands of brands' financials at this point. Could you give me kind of the top 3 financial mistakes that D2C brands are making that you are
Yep.
commonly seeing, where you could just grab the founder and shake them and say, "What are you doing? Why do you keep doing this? We need to stop doing this."
It's very clear. The
Yeah.
first is OpEx of significantly more than 10% of revenue. The modern e-com brand today, it's 10-ish%. Maybe some can get
Got it.
away with close to 15, but 10% or less of OpEx, huge issue out there. The second one is just broken unit economics, scaling unit economics that need to be fixed because they're just scaling a problem instead of scaling unit profitability. And then the third one is all the cash in the business is tied up in excess inventory positions. Those are the 3, time and time again.
How do you fix that third one?
Yeah.
What is your recommendation for
Yeah.
fixing that
Wave
third
the
one?
magic
That
wand,
is,
it's over. Yeah.
that's the unicorn right there.
Yeah. Well, okay. You know why it's so hard, in my opinion, is because it truly is a connecting point. Inventory is a connecting point between ops, marketing, and finance. You can't
Yeah.
solve that inventory problem in just an ops silo. Marketing has to be involved in demand planning. Finance has to be involved in demand and replenishment planning. Usually, when you have too much inventory, it's because some breakdown in demand planning, which marketing oftentimes is like best positioned to do that well,
Yeah.
right? And also there's also a disconnect from like, what is the working capital needs of the business, and can it even finance the inventory buys? And so the point I'm making is it takes all 3 functions to get into that problem, but it also takes all 3 functions to get out of that problem. And so if I were to give you kind of like one general solution, it's get a representative from each of those 3 functions, marketing, ops, and finance, all at the same table to make inventory decisions, including how to get out of overstocked inventory positions.
Ooh, that's some sauce right there.
It is. I wonder, John, because for a number of D2C brands, usually or sometimes there may be a person who's really overseeing all 3 of those functions, or sometimes there is a person in-house for all 3 of those, but a lot of times they're working with external agencies that are, drastically influencing, ads, performance, et cetera, how much inventory is moving. What do you do when there are multiple external parties that need to be coordinated for something like this? Do you bring everybody together for a powwow? I mean, how do you advise your clients?
Great question, because we see this all the time. And I think we're going to see this more and more in the modern organizational structure of e-com brands in 2026 and beyond. Is going to be lean and mean in-house, right? And relying heavily on agencies for subject matter expertise. We really try to get involved with the agency on the marketing side. We try to meet, I mean, just about every agency that works with our clients. We have a few that we work with on a regular basis because we've really kind of like formed kind of like an operational bond with them in terms of helping brands scale profitably. But you have to get those people in the room, and this is less common, there has to be a really talented person inside the brand who can coordinate those 3 parties. But even then, you still got to get them, communicating directly. You can't just play a game of telephone all the time or things break down.
John, I'd love your perspective on kind of personnel for some of the best operating finances for a brand. Could you give me kind of the personnel for the profile of what that looks like for the guy who is operating, or gal that is operating, the best type of financials for a brand? Is it a person that came from a PE background, a VC background? Are they coming from consumer? Are they a Chad scaler just going up and to the right? And which of those is kind of the worst, where you're going in and you're like, oh my gosh, I know this guy has this background. So it is going to be, I know I'm going to dive into this QuickBooks and it's just going to be, it's going to look like World War II. Like it's just going to be a nightmare. So do you have those two perspectives?
No, good question. And look, we have learned a lot about this with just recruiting and building our team at Free to Grow CFO, right? And we had some assumptions about what good was, and we're somewhat surprised, but in hindsight, like, duh, of course. The thing about ecom is when you bring someone who from like an institutional background, investment banking or private equity or VC or something like that, there's a chance they might be able to do a good job on the finance side of things. But there's a disconnect with something critical. I know you guys are, when I say this, you're going to go like, yes, dude, these ecom brands are, we're startups. Even when we're at 50 million a year in revenue, we are changing all the time. We're making decisions on the fly. Constantly. And those bigger institutional guys are like, what the hell is this? This is out of control. Like like if you've been in ecom, the best is someone who knows CPG, but really has some background in ecom. And the reason is the ad spend as a driver of growth, which is unique to D2C, right? And it's not as simple. Too many of these finance guys from other worlds come in and they're like, man, marketing 25% of revenue, then it went up to 33%. We got to cut ads. And it's like, maybe, but we've seen brands scale from 7 to 8 to 9 figures. It's okay for that percentage to go up depending on the understanding of what marketing game that brand is playing and how new versus returning customers, like how that profitability looks every single month. And so I hate to say it, but someone who has an ecom background is key because they have to understand that nuance of ad spend driving the P&L.
Nice.
Maybe we're not so bad after all. We're not so bad.
Maybe we're not so bad. A rare L for VCs and private equity guys in the ecom world.
John, I would love to hear your thoughts on, I mean, I think this 10% OpEx piece is, I'm honestly, I'm glad to hear you say it. I'd love to hear like the path forward for you, looking at financials, what those percentages look like. What do you think a really healthy ecom brand in 2026 and beyond looks like? Where are they spending their money? Where are they not?
Yes. So I think 10% or less in OpEx is going to continue to be the trend and going to be the need. And honestly, man, we're seeing some new brands that are 6-7% OpEx, and they're continuing to keep that under control as they scale. But they're really good at leveraging really good agencies, right?
Yeah.
In terms of the rest of the P&L, it's all about the brand understanding what I call the growth marketing game. Are they playing the apparel game? Are they playing the new customer dominant, no LTV game? Or are they playing the consumables game? Knowing that is key because they all have different requirements for CAC management, retention management, when you expand into new sales channels, and when you launch new products. And so I think the brands that are going to crush it in 2026 and beyond are going to stay lean on the OpEx side, and they're going to really understand that game they're playing. And then they're going to use that to reverse engineer. What are our CAC targets? What do we need from returning customers? When do we expand to new sales channels? And when do we launch new products? That's the key. That's the key going forward.
I love that.
John, boy, you got some game. You got some game in there, John.
He's cooked right now.
He's cooking, baby.
Models.
Wow. That's it. That's incredible, man. Well, I will say this, John. I always kind of associate accounting, finance. I always kind of associate it with boring, But John, you are not boring. You are not boring. And I think if one was to bring in a D2C CFO into their biz, they need to give Jon Blair a fair shake, and they need to talk to you. Now, tell me this, John: if people want to find you, they want to work with you, they want to talk with you, get some of your mind share, get your view on what's going on. Where do they go? Where do they find you? Where do they talk to you, man?
Yeah, I appreciate that. 2 podcasts: Free to Go CFO podcast, Ecom Scaling Show, LinkedIn, and freetogrowcfo.com.
Let's go, John.
Excellent, man. John, we appreciate what you're doing. And as things come back, we need to have you back on to talk about those different playbooks.
Let's do it.
That would be great to have. We need to bring you back. We appreciate you joining us. Look forward to having you again, man.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me.